You want to use your paid leave now? During such a busy time? What are you thinking? Are you serious? Yes, I'm serious. It's for my brother's wedding. Fine, you can take the day off. Actually, don't bother coming back ever. You're fired. Do you understand? Those were the shocking words I received from Mary, the executive, when I requested a single day of paid leave after working at the company for over 10 years. It was the breaking point for me after enduring Mary's harassment for so long. Then I quit. I'll be using my remaining 40 days of paid leave starting today. Thank you for everything over the years. Saying this, I took off my apron. I then grabbed my belongings and left the company. Little did Mary or I know that this would lead to a major crash in the company's stock prices. My name is Lisa. My brother Bob and I had a comfortable life with our kind parents. Every summer we would go on a 2-day trip, and they often took us to famous amusement parks within the country. Our comfortable life changed drastically in the spring of my senior year of high school. My parents went to a nearby tourist spot for cherry blossom viewing. They'd often went out together, so my brother Bob and I easily saw them off. However, on their way back, they got involved in a multi-car accident. Their car was wrecked, and both of them passed away suddenly. Bob and I, who had been comfortably protected by our parents, were thrown into the rough seas of society. As the older sister, I had no time to mourn. I had to quickly shoulder the burdens of life. Bob was still in middle school. I had to be strong for both of us. Holding back my tears, I began to take care of all the household chores for the two of us. Fortunately, we had some savings and insurance money left by our parents, so we weren't immediately troubled by living expenses. However, Bob, unlike me, was a bright student who excelled in his studies. I wanted to give him the opportunity to go to college. I was speechless when I checked the college tuition fees. I had wanted to go to college myself and study nutrition, but that wasn't an option anymore. Deciding to use our parents' savings for Bob's college, I realized that I needed to find a job as soon as I graduated from high school to sustain our future. My job hunt went relatively smoothly. When considering where to apply, I thought of working somewhere related to something my parents loved. That's when I found out about a confectionery shop called Johnson's, which made chestnut sweets, a favorite of my parents. The place was easily accessible from my house, so I set my sights on Johnson's as my top choice and poured my heart into the resume. Before I knew it, I was advancing to an interview with the president and quickly received a job offer that day. Instead of the usual chestnut cake, I bought a special chestnut cake to celebrate my new job with Bob. Bob was tearfully apologizing for making me give up on going to college because of him, but I kept telling him not to worry about it. He shouldn't worry about such things. I hugged him and repeatedly assured him, "It's okay." Besides, although giving up on college was disappointing, I was genuinely happy to work at the store my parents loved. I learned that Johnson's, a confectionery store, was unusually a publicly traded company and quite large. I felt a little pride in being able to work at the main store. Life as a working adult was busy but fulfilling. I'd work all day, come home, cook dinner, clean up, and sleep. In the morning, I'd do laundry and head to the shop. Since I had decided to use the money my parents left for Bob's tuition, I supported our living expenses with my salary alone. I would look for bargains in supermarket flyers to feed a hungry high school boy and my own appetite while cutting down on food expenses. I wanted cute cosmetics now that I was working, but settled for cheaper ones from a supermarket. I kept telling myself to save until Bob graduated from college. He offered to help with household chores, but knowing he studied late into the night, I firmly refused. When I told him, "We can't afford a gap year, so you need to study hard now to make up for it," he understood and began to study even harder every day. His hard work paid off, and he got into a national university. We cried and celebrated together when he got into his first choice university. Once in college, Bob started part-time work, bringing a bit of ease to our lives. When he bought me a dress with his first paycheck, I was so moved that I cried on the train home. Bob's college years flew by quickly. He secured a job as an executive assistant at a company under Smith Holdings, a major corporation, and decided to move out after graduating. It felt like a hole was left in my heart when Bob, whom I raised like a parent, moved out, especially in the early spring chill. However, I was relieved that I could support him through college despite our parents' absence. At the confectionery shop where I have worked nonstop for 8 years, I have had many juniors and have become accustomed to the job. Now there is almost nothing. I don't know much about the shop, but I've become good friends with the craftsmen and have become someone they can rely on. Yet, being family-owned, the company retained some old-fashioned, harsh work practices. I had to do chores like weeding for the president's family and run personal errands for Mary, the president's wife. Mary was quite a handful, always wanting to be the center of attention. I tried to stay under her radar with big round glasses and a simple hairstyle, but still often faced her harassment. Still, I never thought of quitting. I wasn't sure if I, a high school graduate, could find another job easily, and I needed to support Bob. Plus, my pride in working with the chestnut cakes my parents loved kept me from considering leaving. Years after Bob started working, I received a call from him sounding embarrassed. By all accounts, the proposal was a success. His fiancée is called Maria, the daughter of the president of the Smith Group where he works. Bob, working as an executive assistant, had become close with the president's family and quickly formed a bond with Maria. With the blessing of the president and CEO, he had proposed to Maria, and they were now set to marry. "Sis, don't cry. I'll make things easier for you now," Bob said, noticing my tears of joy. "Bob, congratulations," I said, truly overwhelmed with emotion. I couldn't find any other words and just kept repeating, "Congratulations." The wedding was set to take place in 3 months. It coincided with the busy season at the store, but nothing was more important than my dear brother's wedding. Besides, I had hardly used any paid leave so far. If not now, when would I use it? After hanging up the phone, I headed straight to my closet. As expected, I didn't have a dress suitable for a wedding. It's a once-in-a-lifetime event for Bob, so I want to wear something really stylish. I'll go dress shopping on my next day off. I need to get a new small purse too, I thought to myself, unable to contain my excitement, as if it were my own big day. While my mind was filled with happiness about Bob's wedding, the company was facing tough times. Unable to bear Mary's bullying of the female employees, 2 junior colleagues had resigned. Additionally, a veteran male employee left to take over his family business. "Leaving so suddenly shows a lack of responsibility," Mary complained, ignoring the fact that her harassment was the cause. "It's true. At a time when we don't have enough hands," the president agreed, basically being a yes man to Mary. Although it's pitiful that he can't stand up to his wife and follows her lead even at work. He's not reliable at all. Now, with people having left, the president and Mary didn't even think of hiring replacements, dumping the extra work on us and just grumbling, which was truly exhausting. Still, I worked desperately, covering for the juniors who left, and the wedding day approached. Before I knew it, I had planned to apply for a day off when Mary was in a good mood, but hadn't found the right time to mention the wedding. With only 2 weeks left, I had to apply today. "Mary, good evening." "Oh, Lisa, what do you need?" Mary asked. "My brother is getting married," I said. "That's great. Congratulations. And when are you getting married, Lisa?" she asked. "I was just here to apply for leave. I replied, annoyed but not showing it. Someday I will. For now, I'd like to take a day off on the 25th, Sunday. What? You want to take a day off during this busy period? Are you serious? Mary questioned. I am. It's my brother's wedding, I said. Fine, take the day off. Actually, you don't need to come back ever. You're fired. Understand? Mary said, firing me after over 10 years of dedicated service, without hardly taking any leave, and for my brother's wedding. Working tirelessly through this busy period, even covering for those who left, something inside me snapped. Perhaps it was the last straw after enduring years of Mary's harassment. Then I'll resign. I'll use the remaining 40 days of my leave starting today. Thank you for everything over the years, I said as I removed my bandana, ignoring the stunned colleagues, Mary, and the speechless President Johnson. I grabbed my belongings from the locker and left the company without looking back. Despite being unfairly dismissed, I felt a strange sense of liberation once I stepped out of the company. Determined to sever all ties with the company, my first stop was a mobile phone store. I changed my number to ensure I wouldn't receive any calls from the company. Deciding to start anew, I chose to move out of my apartment since the company knew my address, and I didn't want them tracking me down. I thought about looking for a new place through a real estate agent, but then I decided to fulfill a long-held dream of living in a hotel. After all, I had been working for over 10 years since high school without any significant breaks, meaning I couldn't spend my salary on leisure. I had been thrifty, buying only essential clothes and cosmetics, and dining out was out of the question. In other words, I had a decent amount of savings. I decided to treat myself to these savings for my 10 years of hard work. With that in mind, I checked into a business hotel near the station for a long-term stay. I jumped into the freshly made bed, marking the start of my comfortable hotel life. Finally, the day of Bob's wedding arrived. The bride being Maria, the daughter of the well-known Smith Group's president, the wedding was held in a luxurious venue at a top-tier hotel. Tears welled up in my eyes during the speech by Maria's brother, President Smith. My brother has become more admirable than I ever imagined, I thought. Who would have thought he'd earn enough trust to marry the sister of President? According to what my brother told me, President Smith, the son of a chairman, is expected to be the next chairman of the group. Together with President Smith, my brother Bob is improving the performance of the company they're currently managing. I recalled the sudden grief I faced in my senior year of high school. Bob was just a middle schooler then. I struggled with how to guide my brother into adulthood. Through desperate money management and cooking efforts, I helped Bob graduate from college. Now he's doing a respectable job, good enough to marry into a more affluent family. Maria, soon to be Bob's wife, was smiling happily beside him. The more I looked at her, the more I admired her elegant beauty. As a sister, what relieved me most was how kind Maria seemed. Every time something happened, their glances and shared laughter showed how deeply they were in love. It filled me with happiness, too. During the meal with our family after the ceremony, Bob noticed something was bothering me. "Sis, is there something bothering you?" he asked. I had hesitated for just a moment, lost in thoughts about my job situation, and Bob, sharp as ever, whispered in my ear, "No, it's nothing serious." "It doesn't have to be serious, just talk to me about it," Bob insisted. "It's not something to discuss on such a happy day. I'll tell you later, but now you've got me worried." "Come here for a second," he said, gently pushing me behind a partition to give us privacy. I teared up again at my brother's thoughtfulness. "Sis, is it about your job?" "Something tough happened?" Bob asked, hitting the nail on the head. "Yes, about the job. I told them I needed a day off for your wedding, and they said they fired me. I got so mad I resigned on the spot, I confessed. Wait, sis, you worked so hard at Johnson's, and they fired you. Bob was shocked. Yes, remember I told you about that executive always giving me a hard time? She's in charge of attendance. When I asked her for a day off, she said if I'm taking time off during such a busy period, I'm fired, so I just said fine and left with my things. What? Bob was speechless. Didn't they call to apologize later? That was it. Yes, I just wanted to get away from the company, so I changed my cell phone number. I'd even moved out of my house since they knew my address. Now I'm living a lavish hotel life with the money I saved, I explained to Bob. Bob didn't laugh at my attempt to lighten the mood. Maria? He peered from behind the partition, calling his bride. Maria, now in casual clothes instead of her wedding dress, looked even softer as she hurried over. Bob briefly explained my current situation to her. Maria, we have a guest room in our house. Let's make your sister our first guest. I couldn't possibly. I don't want to be a burden on newlyweds. I'm actually enjoying my hotel life. Don't worry about me, I interrupted hurriedly. Bob interrupted my refusal. Maria insists. Sis, really, come stay with us. Living in a hotel, you can't cook, and your nutrition suffers. And sis, you must be anxious. Stay with us until you find your next job. That's right. Our father built us a house that's actually too big for just the two of us. It's perfect. Please stay with us until you feel settled, Lisa, Maria added. I couldn't possibly. I feel so indebted, I replied. It's okay. If you could teach me some of Bob's favorite dishes when you have time, it would help me too. Please, really, is it okay? Maria insisted. Unable to lift my head from a mix of gratitude and guilt, they both nodded with a smile. And so it was decided that I would stay with my brother and his new wife. About a week after I started staying at Bob's, a man came to visit, escorted by Bob. He was John, the son of the president of Johnson's, where I used to work. I knew him by sight, but as he worked for a different company, we had hardly spoken. Why are you here with Bob? I wondered. Bob grinned. Actually, he's a friend from college. Regarding the many years you worked at Johnson's, my parents did something terrible. I can't apologize enough, John sincerely apologized. No, John, you don't need to apologize, I said. Well, I've been thinking of returning to the family business. I found out that your paid leave hasn't been compensated yet, so I'll make sure it's paid this week. Also, there's something confidential, but not now. That's confidential to my sister, too. Bob playfully stopped John. Although I couldn't find out the details, their demeanor made me think nothing bad would happen, so I decided to wait and see. A few days later, I saw on the news that Johnson's stock had plummeted. Had those two done something? I wondered. Maria appeared with a smile. Lisa, I actually loved Johnson's chestnut cakes and held a lot of their stocks. But after what they did to you, Bob and I discussed it and sold them all. My father also held shares, and he was furious when he heard about their treatment of you. So we all sold them. This crash, I held quite a bit for investment purposes. When I sold them all at once, it seems there are many others selling Johnson's shares now, Maria explained, showing me the screen of her tablet displaying news about Johnson's staff resigning and incidents of harassment by Mary. About that, suddenly Bob appeared. John and I bought most of the sold shares. With that, we can have a say in the management. Being the son of the president doesn't make John the president of Johnson's. At the next shareholders' meeting, we plan to oust the current president and executive director and install John as president. We'll clear the bad reputation and compete again with delicious chestnut cakes. John has learned proper management at another company. He's trustworthy. I noticed you and John were planning something, but I never imagined this, I said. Right, sis. When John becomes president, would you support him again? This is a letter from him. Bob handed me a letter from John, containing an apology and a request for me to come back, promising to never involve the current president or Mary in the company again. He asked if I would teach him about the business, becoming his right-hand person. John and I agree that we won't make you do unreasonable work, Bob assured. I couldn't help but smile a bit at the earnestness of their offer. The job at Johnson's, which I had once left behind, but I really do love Johnson's chestnut cakes. Wanting to preserve the flavor cherished by my parents, I nodded quietly yet firmly. When I returned to the company after a long time, most of the staff had resigned. Relationships with suppliers were mostly damaged. It seemed a daunting task to turn things around, but the staff who stayed were highly motivated. Everyone was filled with a desire to protect Johnson's flavors. Moreover, craftsmen who had been with the company since the previous president's time and long-term suppliers were hopeful about John's leadership, which showed a ray of hope for revival. However, just as the business started to improve, the former president and Mary showed up, apparently trying to make a comeback. But when security tried to remove them, they began throwing office supplies, so I immediately called the police. "I'll sue you. How dare you do this?" Mary screamed. I calmly presented past ledgers showing their embezzlement and audio testimony from former employees about Mary's harassment. Then they turned to John for help, but he firmly said, "What Lisa is saying represents the collective decision of the company, including myself." The two were taken to the police, and it turned out they had various charges, including embezzlement, tax evasion, and forgery. They ended up behind bars for a long time. A year later, a big opportunity came to Johnson's. The other party was the Smith Group where Bob worked. They invited Johnson's to join a new business venture they were funding. Of course, the offer came from Bob, the secretary to the president. John agreed immediately, and we were soon busy with recruitment and planning for the new outlet.